This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories.
He's an enemy of progress in Uganda.
In an exclusive BBC Africa interview, President Museveni accuses opposition politician Bobi Wine of waging a war of economic in Uganda. Protecting girls from cervical cancer, a new vaccination program is launched in Kenya. Also in the program, making a point. The dancer breaking step with ballet traditions. And in sports, the Springboks prepare for their biggest hurdle so far at this year's Rugby World Cup as they take on hosts Japan in the quarterfinals. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni says musician turned politician Robert Kyagulanyi, also known as Bobi Wine, is waging an economic war on the country. Mr. Museveni is seeking a sixth term in office in 2021. Bobi Wine, who's the leader of the People Power movement, accuses the president of oppression and says he, in turn, has been subjected to torture while in prison. President Museveni gave an exclusive interview to BBC Africa's Alan Kasuja in Kampala.
Mr. Bobi Wine went to America and said that people should not come and invest in Uganda. That's what he said. That means he's an enemy of progress in Uganda.
But is that justification, though, for the sort of cancellation of his concerts? There are people who depend on him.
If you are waging war on our country, well, that's economic war. When you go and you tell foreigners that they should not come and invest in our country, you are waging war on our prosperity. So why then do you at the same time want to come and take advantage of that prosperity?
Of course, now 33 years later, you're still president of Uganda. How much longer can you continue?
I have my home, you know very well, and my home is waiting for me. But you have issues. We have issues as Uganda, as Africa, to deal with. It is those issues that make us do what we decide to do politically, along with our colleagues. Now, if the front of the NRM think that they no longer require the contribution of the elders, then we happy to go and do other things.
In other countries, people like Julius Nyerere left, Ali Hassan Mwinyi left, even though there was a demand for them to stay. At what point will you say to them that enough is enough?
There's a way they analyzed the issues there, but there's a way also we have analyzed our issues here. We have been able to, because if you look at our issues, regional, internal, every 5 years, there are big changes. From 1989 to 2006, that's when we discovered our oil. So what I'm telling you is that if you are serious, because of course the problem is that for us we are serious people, we are not jokers, we are not job seekers, we are destiny seekers, looking for the destiny of our people.
Well, we have been in contact with the Ugandan opposition leader, Bobi Wine, and his spokesman sent us this response. The allegation that Robert Kyagulanyi told Americans not to invest in Uganda is not only ridiculous, but also littered with falsehoods. Now, he goes on to say that in September 2018, Bobi Wine cautioned Americans about the military aid they give to Uganda, since it's not being used to protect Ugandans. Now, the statement ends by saying, Mr. Museveni, please carry your cross of mismanaging our country. Stop passing the blame. Now, the issue of relations between Uganda and Rwanda was also part of the exclusive interview. There have been months of tension after President Museveni and President Paul Kagame exchanged accusations of spying, political assassinations, and meddling. Now, an agreement signed in August to end the tension appears not to have held.
What's going on between Uganda and Rwanda? You called it a hiccup not too long ago, but they closed the border at the beginning of the year. The border is still closed now. Hundreds of millions of dollars are lost on both sides.
What I have said is that I will not want to discuss in the press what I have time to discuss with President Kagame in a confidential meeting.
This is clearly not something that is shared on the other side, because we get the sense from what Kigali is saying that Kampala is supporting people who are looking to destabilize the government. There are people who are going as far as saying that you are interested in regime change in Rwanda, that there are Rwandans who are being held in places, in undesignated, ungazetted places in Uganda. Surely these are issues that you ought to be reacting to.
We were in Rwanda, Angola. We signed a communique. Go and read that communique.
Well, let's bring in Professor Gerald Karieja, East African political analyst. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa. What's the thrust of this communique that President Museveni is talking about? Because it appears to have failed.
The thrust of the communique is that Uganda and Rwanda should avoid perceptions that create an impression that the two countries are supporting forces that fight each other. And the other question was also about citizens, especially of Rwanda, who are being held in Uganda. That was the thrust of it. And also the other one was about economic sabotage or the economic relations, because it appears to Uganda as if it is a trade embargo.
So has it worked, or is it working? Because as we speak, the border is still closed.
It isn't working, but we get a sense that there's a lot of political jostling and diplomatic shuffling. But for the ordinary citizens, the students who want to study, the people who want to trade, they do not see anything near. But my take is that until the two principals discuss issues that are not only about their nations, but about themselves, that's where the cracks might be.
But is that something that we will ever see soon? Because they both have quite a complicated relationship. What would it take?
I think it will be seen, because we have seen them have tension before. We have seen them almost go at war before. We have seen Uganda and Rwanda have serious battles in Congo, but at the same time we get back together. Uganda and Rwanda are intrinsically and internally connected, that it's very hard for this to be sustained until matter is resolved.
What are the regional implications, I wonder, because I'm also quite curious about why that particular communique was signed in Angola.
Rwanda, and especially President Kagame, I think, would like to demonstrate that he's out of the wings of President Yoweri Museveni, who is perceived as his mentor. And at the same time, President Yoweri Museveni, I think, he is a dominant force in the region. And I think going out of the East African community was, in my view, to save the fragile community and also to have a wider consultation, because it's very telling that Rwanda, Congo Brazzaville, and the DRC were heavily involved in this. It largely tells us that there is need for further consolidation, and also retreat to Angola is because of its role in the liberation struggle of Africa, for which President Yoweri Museveni identifies with a lot.
All right, Professor Gerald Karieja, thank you very much indeed for taking time to talk to us and Focus on Africa. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's now take a quick look at other stories making headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. Floods caused by 8 days of torrential downpours in northeastern Ghana have left 28 people dead and displaced hundreds, according to official reports. Relief items are being transported 800 kilometers by road from the capital Accra to the affected region on the border with Burkina Faso. Meteorologists warn that the rains could last into November. There's been a growing frustration among refugees in Libya, as only a handful of them have been resettled to other countries. The UN Refugee Agency says many have resorted to bribery. The UN says it is unable to resettle the majority of migrants and refugees stuck at transit centers.
But I can tell you there are equally people in need outside detention center. So we try to balance more and more resettlement from detention and resettlement from outside detention. Because inside detention center, it's also, you have two categories of people. You have people who have been intercepted when they try to leave Libya by sea on boats, and they have been brought back to detention center. And you have desperate individuals who go to detention center. Sometimes they pay to get inside detention center.
The international community is calling for a political dialogue in Guinea, where at least 9 people have been killed since protests began on Monday. Human rights groups have also called on the government to release civil society members that have been arrested. Demonstrators are denouncing a possible change to the constitution that could lead to President Alpha Conde seeking a 3rd term. A senior former politician from the Gambia has admitted that he was responsible for the execution of soldiers accused of trying to topple the former president Yahya Jammeh. Edward Singate was speaking at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Now, girls in Kenya aged 10 and over are from today being offered the HPV vaccine as part of a nationwide program aimed at reducing rates of cervical cancer. HPV, or the human papillomavirus, is a sexually transmitted infection that can lead to cervical cancer later in life. In fact, HPV infections cause approximately 68,000 cervical cancer cases each year in Africa alone. Well, as Rhoda Odhiambo reports, the Catholic Church was previously opposed to the move to roll out the vaccine, but now they vowed to work with the government to promote the cause.
After 7 years of planning when and how to roll out the HPV vaccine in the country, today, girls as young as 10 years old received this life-saving vaccine free of charge. So rare is the opportunity that everyone, including President Uhuru Kenyatta, saw young girls get the fast jab that will prevent them from getting cervical cancer. Its launch comes weeks after the Catholic Church opposed the move, but now they no longer oppose it.
We wanted to get an assurance that it has no negative side effects in our country. And now I can say that it has been assured to us that it is safe, and hence the launch today.
It is safe and it is...
30-year-old Millicent Kagonga, a survivor of cervical cancer, brought her daughter here to be given the vaccine. She says that she wouldn't want her to go through what she went through while on treatment.
Please follow my footsteps and let your daughters to be vaccinated.
Data from the Health Ministry shows that more than 5,000 women were diagnosed with the disease last year. More than 3,000 of them died. Health Cabinet Secretary Cicely Kariuki noted that the introduction of the vaccine would help in reducing these figures. Cervical cancer is the second most common cancer among women in Kenya after breast cancer. The vaccine is highly effective when administered before initial exposure to the virus, thus the need to vaccinate children below 10 years as they are mostly sexually inactive.
This vaccination, which is going to be part of our routine vaccinations, is safe, is already administered in 115 countries. We have done our own pilot here in the county of Kitui in the years 14-15, and we did not record any adverse effect whatsoever.
President Uhuru Kenyatta urged Kenyans to take charge of their health by going for regular screenings to avoid late diagnosis of the disease. 80% of cancers in the country are diagnosed late. He warned those opposing the introduction of the vaccine from spreading false information about its effectiveness.
Cancer affects and attacks all of us. We must work together to defeat it and to reduce its impact on Kenyan society.
Kenya now joins Uganda, Tanzania and Rwanda in the East African region in vaccinating girls against cervical cancer, which will cost the Kenyan government about $7.7 million in the first year. Rodo Diambo, BBC News, Nairobi.
This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come in sports, following the disgraceful racist scenes when England faced Bulgaria this week, the Premier League steps up the fight against racism in football. I'm Sophie Ikenye and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program. In an exclusive BBC Africa interview, President Museveni has accused opposition politician Bobi Wine of waging economic war on Uganda. A new HPV vaccination program has been launched today in Kenya with hopes of reducing the country's cervical cancer rates. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sport. Peter.
Many thanks, Sophie. Now, I don't know about you and every other person, but this Sunday I'll be glued to my TV for the Japan-South Africa rugby quarter-final match at the ongoing World Cup in Japan. Japan as hosts, of course, will have the home fans behind them, but their skill, speed and spirit at this competition has also won them new fans, not least amongst them the South African team itself. But the Springboks say they will put that affection for Japan aside and spoil the hosts' party. According to assistant coach Matt Proudfoot, it should be quite a match.
I can just imagine how exciting it's going to be for the crowd sitting watching there. But saying that from this perspective, the way we handle this wouldn't be any different to the way we handle the New Zealand mindset or playing England at Twickenham. It's the same type of mindset. We focus on our battles, we focus on where our pressure points are going to be, and we relish it. We relish that opportunity in playing in this amazing occasion with an amazing stadium, with an amazing crowd, a passionate crowd. I mean, it buoys our guys on just as much as it's going to buoy their players on. To play in that environment, I mean, I just get goosebumps just thinking about it.
Now, the issue of racism in football grabbed the headlines this week following racial abuse suffered by black England national team players in Bulgaria. Here in England, the Premier League has announced plans to step up the fight against racism in the game. Their No Room for Racism campaign will see extra measures put in place ahead of this weekend's Premier League games. Former Nigeria international Shola Ameobi, who spent 14 years at Newcastle United, is part of the campaign and told us more.
It's abhorrent what happened, but it's great that, the Premier League are taking action, and I think it's really important that as a whole, football and society, this is not acceptable, and it's about time that everyone comes together and sees what we can do. We're trying to train stewards, to be more equipped to deal with this, but also, for me, it's about reporting it. It's about making sure, if you see it, the behaviour, reporting to stewards, the police, even the Kick It Out app that is out there. And the good thing is we are seeing greater numbers of people reporting it. And I think the only way we're going to tackle this is by everyone sort of understanding we have to do it together. Fans, players, coaches, teams, organisations, and I think that is the message that we want to send out, that this is socially unacceptable, and the only way we can fight this battle is by doing it together.
Well, the biggest match in the Premier League this weekend is Manchester United versus Liverpool. It used to be the biggest game in this division, but if Liverpool win, they could extend their lead at the top of the table. And if that happens and other results go against United, well, the Red Devils could find themselves in the relegation zone. And as an added bonus for Liverpool, the club has just announced that Cameroon defender Joel Matip has signed a new long-term contract. Well, that game is on Sunday. Before that, some of Saturday's matches include Chelsea at home to Newcastle and West Ham away at Everton. In Spain, this month's El Clasico between Barcelona and Real Madrid has been postponed because of fears of civil unrest. The match was scheduled for the 26th of October, but there have been days of protest in Barcelona after 9 Catalan separatist leaders were jailed on Monday. Both Barcelona and Real Madrid disagreed with calls to switch the game to Madrid. Now, Nigerian international Victor Osimhen has been named September's French Ligue 1 Player of the Month. The 20-year-old striker, who joined Lille in August from Belgian side RSC Charleroi, scored twice and provided 2 assists in 5 matches last month as Lille climbed into the top 5. Osimhen was the top scorer as Nigeria clinched a 5th Under-17 World Cup title in 2015 with 10 goals. And a line for you from the NBA. The great Luol Deng has retired from basketball after signing a 1-day contract with Chicago Bulls. It means he ends his playing career with the NBA franchise at which he started in 2004 and played for 10 years. The 34-year-old was born in what is now South Sudan, raised in Egypt, and then moved to London before relocating to the United States as a teenager. He spent 15 seasons in total in the NBA and was a 2-time All-Star. A true great of the games. Sophie, that's your sports.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Ballerina Precious Adams made headlines when she asked to swap her pink tights for ones that better matched her darker skin tone. The 24-year-old is the only black female dancer in the world-famous English National Ballet Company. Now, speaking to the BBC as part of the 100 Women series, she opens up about representation, balancing roles and embracing her imperfections.
We're creative athletes. We're at like the top of our field. Nothing's ever enough. Nothing's ever like good enough or perfect enough. So it's always like you could do more. That was one of the things that drew me to working for English National Ballet. Was the fact that they had a female director, and it's so rare to have a woman in that position, so that's what really drew me to it. When I asked Tamara about, why are tights pink, like what does it mean? Because, you know, if I understand correctly, it's to continue the line of the body, and it's so contrasting on me. You know, when I started this conversation with her, I didn't think it would turn into like this like whole big conversation. I really just was like thinking about, quite selfishly, I was just thinking about myself. I realized that it opened up the conversation around colors and what is made for me and what includes me and what is made with me in mind. Representation has affected me and has inspired me, so I know that other people need it too. It's like you do an hour-and-a-half show, but it's like you're warming up for at least 30 minutes or 45 minutes before that show. But you've probably also done class, you've done the gym, you've done Pilates. That's why it's always, for a professional dancer at this level, it's always kind of insulting when people go, oh, but what do you do to make money? Or like, well, what do you do for like your real job? And I'm like, this is my full-time profession. This is the whole thing. Like, this takes all like my energy, time, effort. It's a full-time job. I think as I've grown up and become more mature, I've just started to embrace my uniqueness and embrace my little imperfections. But yeah, I still feel like there's so much more I want to achieve. Like, there's so much more I want to do.
Well, I look at our top story on Focus on Africa and the exclusive interview with Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni. Speaking to Alan Kasuja at State House in Entebbe, he accused musician-turned-politician Robert Kyagulanyi, also known as Bobi Wine, of waging an economic war on the country. Mr. Museveni alleged that during a visit to the US, the musician had said people should not invest in Uganda. In response, Bobi Wine described the allegation as ridiculous and a falsehood. And that's Focus on Africa for now. Thank you for your company. Bye.